Good morning. I'm going to call the 9 a.m. special meeting to approve the 2023-24 annual financial report and cost report. At this time, I would ask that we stand for Pledge Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Roll call.
Will Furry present.
Sally Hunt.
Charles Massaro.
LaShaka Moore.
We have a quorum. Are there any agenda changes?
I do not have any.
Okay. Board action items, 3.01, request board approval for the annual financial report and cost report for the 2022-23 fiscal year. Ms. Warmack.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members, and Superintendent Moore. I am here to present the annual financial report for the 22-23 fiscal year. We're going to start with the document that is labeled AFR 145. There are two different documents on here. One's the 348, which feeds all of the data into the 145. Both are required to be submitted by DOE. I'm going to just focus on the first 8 pages, which is management's discussion and analysis, also referred to as the MD&A. This is a summary of the 150 pages of financial data that you'll see on board docs. But this will summarize it pretty good for you, and this is usually what we use just as a quick summary of all of this data. So on page 1, under financial highlights, I just want to state there's two things going on here. We have all of our fund statements, which is what you're all used to seeing during the year, and then per various accounting standards, we're required to make several different paper entries on top of all of this. So I'm going to focus on the information that is relevant, which is what we see on a day-to-day basis. Under financial highlights, the fourth bullet point there, our general fund balance at the end of 22-23 is $7,443,970. This is a decrease of $945,000 from last fiscal year. I just want to note that we did plan to use $1.5 million of the fund balance to balance our budget, and we did have approximately about $1 million of increased costs due to unexpected inflation this past fiscal year. So on that note, we did end up much better than we actually had thought we were going to end up. The last bullet point there, the total debt decreased $4.3 million or 12%. This is mainly the result of the principal payments being applied against the debt balances. I'm going to scroll over to page 4. This is the summary of the balance sheet. Just a few things to note. The largest portion of the district's balance sheet is the capital assets, which you can see total $164 million in that top section there. That is nets of accumulated depreciation. Looking at the bottom of that chart, the net position, keep in mind, again, this includes all of the paper entries that are required by various standards. This is not a reflection of actual funds, but it is a reflection of all of our debt put on the books and all of our capital assets put on the books. So as you can see, the net investment in capital assets of $133 million, that's net of the debt that is taken out for those assets. The restricted of $77 million, that includes various categoricals, inventory, as well as all of the fund balances that are restricted for capital assets, for debt, and for food service. And then the unrestricted, which is a deficit of $56 million. Once again, this is the result of all of those paper entries of us putting all of our debt on the books. This is something that is required, but again, is not a reflection of our day-to-day activity. Going over to the next page, page 5, this is a summary of our operations. Just a few items to note here. Property taxes, which is our largest revenue source, 44%. That did increase by $12.6 million, and that is a direct result of our increase in our taxable assessed values. Our revenues from the state, which is our FEFP, is approximately 37%. Keep in mind, once again, as I've noticed several times in various meetings, the property taxes and our FEFP revenue has an inverse relationship. As our property tax value and revenue goes up, our state funding for FEFP does go down. You can see the unrestricted investment earnings increased quite a bit. It's at $3 million this year versus just a couple $100,000 last year. This is one of our biggest items that we saw a big increase. We closed the year at about 5% of earnings on our SBA investments, and last year it was under 1%. So the interest rate has increased substantially during the year, and it has sustained at least 4% throughout the year. Instruction expense, you can see at the bottom, the first item at the bottom, which is the expenses, did increase quite a bit. This is the result of increases in salary benefits, more costs put in the classroom. One of the biggest items is because this past year, we did fill a lot of our vacancies that were unfilled in the previous year. That did help to use less subs, but that also was an increased cost that we did budget for, but you didn't see in the prior year due to all the vacancies that were at our schools. And then the other one that increased a little bit was operation of plant from 10 million to 12 million, kind of towards the bottom there. That is a direct result of the increase of salary and benefits as well. I just want to highlight on our major governmental funds at the bottom of page 6. This, again, these are the items that we see on a routine daily basis. Our general fund is our chief operating fund. As I mentioned earlier, our total fund balance is $7.4 million. The unrestricted portion, which is the portion used for the calculations per Florida statutes, is $6 million. That $6 million is the unassigned fund balance, and it's 5% of our general fund revenues. As you know, the board's policy recommends 5 to 8%, so we are just right there. The total fund balance is 6% of total revenues. The special revenue other fund at the very bottom, that is our regular grants. The revenue and expenses, which always have to match per standards, is $7.2 million. Those are the IDEA, Title I, Title II grants. Over to page 7, the special revenue federal education stabilization fund. As you know, these are the ESSER funds. Total revenue and expenses for this fiscal year was $8.7 million. Going down a couple paragraphs, the capital projects, local capital improvement, that is our LCI funds, that's our 1.5 mil. We ended with a total fund balance of $19.3 million. This is a very healthy fund. As I mentioned several times before, we did hold back post-pandemic on several projects, and so we have a very healthy fund balance. The increase from last year was $2.5 million, as you can see noted there, and that's primarily due to the increase in our taxable and our tax revenues that go into the property fund. The next paragraph, capital projects, other fund. This is your sales tax and your impact fees. The total fund balance is $54.5 million. That was an increase of $13 million, which was due to the increase that we saw in impact fees and sales tax funds. Scrolling down to the bottom, capital asset and long-term debt. Our total capital assets, $164 million. As you can see, this includes all the items for our land, any construction in progress we have, which currently is the Matanzas expansion, any improvements to buildings, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, vehicles, and any kind of software. At the end of this fiscal year, our one major capital project that we are committed to is the Matanzas High School expansion, total estimated cost of $22.9 million. Scrolling over to page 8, the last item here to note is the long-term debt. At June 30th, 2023, we had total debt outstanding of $26.3 million. That includes $960,000 of bonds, which has been paid off since in the 23-24 fiscal year, and $25.3 million of our COPS. Those are due to be paid off in 2031. As I mentioned earlier, we did have $4.4 million of debt payments applied against those balances this year. That is a summary of our annual financial report. If there are any questions, I will take them now.
I have one, and Patty, forgive me if you already said this. When you talked about where we landed on the reserve fund balance.
The
did you
general
give us
fund?
The general fund balance. Well, where did the percentage land?
It's just under 5%. These statements always round up. They're required to just round up or down.
Right.
So it's about 4.9%, I do believe. So we're right there at about 5%. That is the unrestricted fund balance.
Great. And that's, my understanding is the previous board wanted us to be at a 5 to 8, so we're really just kind of right at
We're
about
just right there.
there. Great.
Yes.
Thank you, Patty. Appreciate
No
it.
problem.
Any other questions? Okay, I need a motion.
Move approval.
Second?
Second?
All right, we have a motion on the floor to approve the 22-23 fiscal year budget as presented.
If I could just make one note, also being approved is the cost report. That is something that is electronically submitted. That will be submitted today. So there are no documents to submit, such as the AFR. After approval of this, we will submit this document today or Monday, which
All
is
right,
the actual due
including the
date.
cost report.
Exactly.
Okay, and we have a first by Mr. Ferry and a second by Ms. Hunt. Any further questions? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous, therefore it passes.
Thank you.
We're going down now to public comment. Any public comment?
There's no public comment.
Okay. Board members' comment. Any board members' comment?
No comments.
No comments today.
All right, no comments. Superintendent comment.
Happy 20th day of school. Happy Friday.
All right, then I will now adjourn this meeting. Meeting's adjourned.